507. I am your host, Loren. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, as we have been in these past couple of months, we are on the road and traveling. Right now, we are currently in Amstelveen, Holland, just southeast southeast of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Um, and so, again, apologizing for any background music. We picked the quietest corner we could, similar to last week, in the hopes that we won't be too much distraction as we talk about our topics today, or our topic in particular today. Um, as been most of the shows for the past couple of months, there's been more firsthand discussions, kind of like almost a personal vlog as to experiencing firsthand simply as a guest consumer traveler the changes and differences and needs and functions of what we provide as services for marketing and hospitality and how that translates into experiences and appreciation of information, usability of information, accuracy of information, and accuracy of the marketing communication that the marketing was providing. In that tone also, and we brought this to a conversation point last week, we wanted to talk this week about a little bit more of a tangible dollar amount aspect to things. Now, we've had a discussion about the end of summer last year in regards to travelers' budgets. We did that in discussion to our own budget season for hospitality businesses, which is usually the August and September time season. We made jokes as we always do. We're one of the few, if not only industry, that has a budgeting season in which we take the time to go through the entire process evaluation, implementation, forecasting, and then submissions. And with that, we talked about the value proposition of calculating how we see our pricing rates as we see in market and demand. Now, unfortunately, most of our budgeting when it comes to how we determine what our rates will be and so forth is based on revenue goals that are assigned to us by the people that have invested into the business itself, the owners of the hotel or the management company that operates it for the owners. And so it's an inversion to say that there should be also a reflection of what the consumer calculates as what they need to spend or what they have to spend for them to exercise their option with your business. Now, we're talking purely today on transient business, not corporate travelers, which the company pays for their travel expenses, so they're less sensitive to the pricing restrictions or pricing variances and so forth. They're given budgets at best, or that they qualify for, there's negotiated rates or something. We're talking about transient decision-making process. So our topic today is very granular to how to define your guest's travel budget to know what you, as a hotelier, can sell. Now, the value proposition of this is it's being guest-centric. You're really tailoring your pricing strategy and as one of the components as to what actually is the forbearance that your guest can afford to pay. Now, there are other factors I'm not excluding from our conversation. I am saying that this is an inclusion to the other discussions you have, which is revenue goals for operation, revenue goals for profitability, earning EBITDA and so forth, cash flow, comp set saturation, demand to market. These are all things that are components of the strategy that is used to determine rate strategy, occupancy strategy. I'm saying that in addition to all of those aspects of calculation, a human component should be included. So I wanted to have our discussion today to talk a little bit about the actual components associated with the traveler and their selection process related to what we're asking for rates in relationship to our inventory. Now, we have to play some groundwork as to the normal functionality as to how revenue management is used to calculate the means and methods of rate and rate strategies. You have a fixed amount of inventory that your product actually has that has a percentage in comparison to the entire market. That's your entire market's inventory. Then you have your segmentation as to where you are represented on your tier of inventory. Are you a mid-tier property, an upper-tier property, luxury, mid-tier, full flag, lower-tier limited services? Are you eclectic? Is there a size limitation to you, a limitation of inventory, type of inventory, length of stay inventory? All of these have a designation as to why you are doing the business that you're doing as what you are. What is your name? Where's your location? All these have variances as to the value of what you can charge for rate. Obviously, if you're in a high demand area, you have large amenities, you have a variety of inventory, and you have those combinations in quality of product, maybe a brand flag that can warrant a certain rate tiering, then those are all major contribution factors to it. You also have demographic designation. How do you see who is coming into your hotel? We know that there's seasonal changes, event-driven changes, demographic changes, but the point that we're making with marketing a lot of times is you can't advertise to family travelers and corporate travelers and urban travelers and think that they're not going to clash if you're trying to have them come all in the same day. Uh, Families don't want to be around people that aren't around families. People that don't want to be around families don't want to be around families, so forth and so on. So your demographic, your persona, so what your business is chasing after, has a huge part to play in this conversation that we're going to talk about today. To break things down from the consumer perspective, there are 4 components to every travel program for transient travel. You have the cost of transportation, whatever the modality is, flights, driving, train, whatever. You have the cost of accommodation, our focal point. You have the cost of entertainment, which is the things that you do while you're there, obviously. Passes to the museum or concert tickets or venues or theme parks or whatever. And then you have your transportation costs. Now, under these 4 components, they're worked into a single budget from the transient perspective. And to give you an idea of what that budget is, you from general statistics, industry averages, and what have you, is that about 10% of anybody's gross income as a family is portioned to travel for the family. Of that, most families, and I'm speaking domestic U.S., have 2 travel incursions per year that are noteworthy. There might be small weekend jaunts or hops. There might be one day, how to get far in one tank and come back kind of thing. And that deviates from all the components we just talked about, the 4 components associated with transient travel. But primarily, there are 2 focal vacations for transient travelers. And they're not exactly split even. There is holiday travel, and then there is large family travel or component travel. Holiday travel tends to be just that. You're looking at, based on religious and preferences and so forth, usually around Christmas and or around Mother's Day and or around things like that that are holiday based. Then the second component, travel, is the larger of the portions of budgets allocated, and that is the duration travel, the longer travel. So you basically have a 2/3, 1/3 split between these 2. So now we go to the demographic discussion, the persona discussion of people coming into your hotel. Based on what your product is and the demographic people that it draws, and the purpose of their travel for transient business or transient travel, you have an anticipated income. There is a range of income that people can perceive based on their demographics. If they're a family with 2 children, ages 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 or 7 to 9, 9 to 13, whatever, 9 to 11, 11 to 13. They also follow different age groupings. And not everybody fits into these molds. These are statistical averages as to about these age group has about these age children, so forth and so on. There's always variance, but that's usually the case. Because of that, there is a progression of income growth over the lifespan of people. Your first job when you first come out of the gate, on average, is one of your lowest paying jobs compared to the escalation of your skills and capabilities and job opportunities as you advance in your life. So your income tends to follow that process, and then it begins to go to the retirement segment. So these are all statistically relevant assumptions that can be made and applied to generalizations as to your demographics of people. If you're looking for urban-centric, metrosexual, brand-sensitive, see and be seen, location is everything kind of mentality, there is an applied implication as to their age group, their family status, and their relative income. Now, always in everything we're saying, there are variations that don't fit the pattern of averaging. But we're going to look at averages to make these kind of comparisons. So if you're looking for family, if they're of an age somewhere between 30 to 35, their children are probably going to be around the ages of 5-ish to 7-ish, maybe a little older if they started sooner, a little younger if they started later. But that's the general ranges of it. They usually will have at least one, maybe two children at that point because they don't want them too far spaced in age and so forth. The things in life that we all go through. So with that in mind, you know that there is probably combined income. You can make assumptions and basics as to what you think it is that they will be generating. But just to keep it mathematically easy for us in our discussion, let's say the gross family income is $100,000 and it's a family of four, two children, ranges between ages 5 and 7-ish. And for that reason, say 10% of their gross combined income is $10,000. Now, knowing that we on average have two travel events per year for the family, okay, and it's a 2/3, 1/3 split. The 1/3 split is the holiday travel, usually, meaning it's more for a more condensed period of time for a specific reason, usually related to holidays. Then out of that $10,000, you could be safe in assuming that most likely it's around $3,500 that would be dedicated to that trip. That means that about $6,500, okay, is dedicated to their large family trip. Now, with the demographics as we described them, most likely it's related to the children not being in school or having the flexibility around the schooling schedule, which means that summertime is usually the preferential time to travel and or springtime travel because of the break that the children often have in school at that time. And so for that reason, those are two areas of opportunity if that's a seasonality that your hotel caters to. And your hotel caters to families, and your hotel is welcoming to this demographic of family, and you have reasons in your market for people to want to be with you for the purpose of what their children ages are. So all that being said, you have, let's say they have around $6,500 that they are planning on spending for a duration of stay with you. Now, a duration of stay is a relative term. Obviously, if you're a hotel and based on your ADR, there's a max amount of days that they can stay. Obviously, they're looking at the opportunity based on their work schedules, their ability to take time away for vacation from their work. That usually people are in full swing of their career working at that time. So taking a week off or taking a 2-week vacation are really the functional forms of those, okay? Now, breaking it down into the reality of their travel, if it's a drive market, we've talked about drive markets before, they're in basically 3 categories of range. Something easy to get to in a half a day, something to get to by the end of the day, and something that's going to take more than a day to get to them. That's usually broken down into about 200 miles, 350 miles, and then anything beyond 500 miles or beyond 350 miles up to 500 miles is the third option. Because after 500 miles, the option of flying seems more reasonable, except for maybe the cost factor, to get there to optimize the time that they have. Usually, there's a correlation between the distance traveled and the duration of stay. If they can afford the travel to fly, they may not be able to afford the duration of stay as much as if they were to drive. That, of course, is variable on gas prices or the cost of transportation of the vehicle to get there. Obviously, with gas prices higher, that changes the dynamic. So there is variables to our entire discussion. But going on to the averaging and the statistical relevance of average means and so forth, we're saying that these people will drive. They'll drive for a full day to get to you by the end of the day. So we're looking at about 350 miles. That's a big circle around your property. And you can verify your feeder markets from historical business and or successful traffic analytics of your website as to where people are at searching on your site or looking for your site, or what people historically have come from to get to your destination for what reasons they want to come. And so you can verify that. So let's just make the assumption in our conversation today that you have a drive market family ranging between 30 and 35 years old with 2 children, as I said, between 5 and 7, with a average family income, gross family income of around $100,000, with a $10,000 annual travel budget, 2/3 of which is for their long duration stay, $6,500. Now, taking that $6,500 for the family of 4, you have 4 aspects, as we mentioned, to it. You have the transportation cost to get there. We've already made the assumption it's travel or driving, a whole day travel. Then you have the cost associated with accommodations, us. Then you have the cost of the entertainment that they'll be doing when they're in your market, what they're going to be doing, the amenities are going, if they're renting beach things or going to amusement parks or whatever it is, the cost of doing the things there. Then you have meals. The thing that of what they have to do while they're there, and what you include, what they pay for you to have or whatever, and all the things associated with having meals. So if your ADR is $200 and they have $6,500 to spend, we're going to park that for just a second. Let's figure that their length of stay is going to be willfully 5 days. Okay, if you're a $200 ADR, just rounding it out without the taxes and the potential resort fees or whatever, which you should be doing in there, their max, but for them to stay 5 days with you, okay, is $1,000 for accommodations. That's out of that $6,500 they anticipate paying for. Then you got to figure, okay, that's a ballpark. Now, gas. If gas is $3.50 a gallon, okay, and they are going 350 miles, and they're getting 25 miles to the gallon. So that's 4, that's 8, that's 12, that's 15 gallons of gas times $3.50. That's 35. Let's say $50 worth of gas one way. That's just to get to you. You have meals, which averages about, for every person, including children, just as a general average, about $25 per person per day. So just getting there in a day, they're going to probably notch out about $100 worth of the food and about $50 worth of gas, $150 there to get to you. Now, if they're planning on staying with you 5 days, there's another $1,000. So that's $1,150 of their total spend. If they're going to amusement parks and getting things, the average cost per person is around $50 a day. So 50 times 5, okay, $250 per person. That's $1,000 there. So now we've spent $2,150 between first day meals, your accommodations, and 5 days worth of entertainment stuff. Now, if it's $25 per person per day, that's $100 a day, 5 days. That's $500. That's added on top of that. So now we're just shy of $2,000. That's going towards this. Now, that's food. That's travel to get to you. That is the accommodations with you. Okay. From that, you have to figure that this is just base numbers. They're saying they're going to stay with you 5 days. Now, gas for those 5 days, whether they need to spend gas per day, these are all incremental costs that they have to tack on to this process. Then that's how they look at the budget of what they can afford. So in this scenario, they can either stay longer with you if your rates are consistent to the $200 as the example we're making, or they can go to a more affordable place or a more expensive place because they only have 5 days to stay with you. So if they want to stay with you 2 weeks, that has now immediately doubled. And we're 2/3 into the amount that this one trip would be costing for them, just by doubling what we calculated for the first week, adding in a whole another week to it, just doubling it. Okay. So for a 2-week vacation with the kids, you're looking at about 2/3 of their entire budget potential that they had calculated for. If they were to stay at a more expensive place, or you had higher rates, or you didn't have the same rates, or things got more expensive because it was the demand to market, or they did more things for entertainment, or they bought more food for whatever they're doing and souvenirs and so forth, and that all goes into that budgeting process. So the point of this exercise and the round numbers and the napkin math that we're doing is to really talk about how the consumer evaluates their options in your market. You may have done a great job of marketing. You are in the position, location that they find most interesting. You have the product of room types that they find most enjoyable. Okay. You have the amenities that they're looking for. And you may have even given the suggestions of places where to eat outside of your own, or discount tickets to the entertainment things that are around you. There may have been a lot of contributions to your process to get there. But as they evaluate how they are going to spend their money, they have to make it work budgetarily. So in the simple example that we just talked through with the kids and the demographics that we just talked about, you change that to teenagers or preteens. They don't want to be in the same room with their parents. So now you're doubling the accommodations cost with the same numbers we're talking about per week, per day, because you get 2 rooms. The food cost stays the same, but the entertainment costs would go up, because it'd be more variations of things to do and more things they wanted to do separately, more of their own things that they would want to do. So the cost of the entertainment of the older children goes up as well. Transportation will remain about the same. Now, obviously, you change the scenario a little bit, and instead of them driving to you, they're flying to you. And the average cost has gone up for airline tickets this year for 2023, over 30% overall compared to the same time last year. So if you're at $300, which is about the national average of domestic travel for flights, $300, then family of four, okay, that 300 times 4 is $1,200 just to get you there. That's a lot different than the $50 in gas we just talked about. So that $1,200 has to still fit in that $6,500 budget. If your rate wasn't $200, but it was $250, okay, that still has to fit in the $6,500 budget, the fictitious budget that we've created. If your food prices are higher and the cost per person per day for food isn't the national average of $25 per head, okay, actually, to be fair, to make the numbers more accurate, it's $25 per meal period. So it would be $75 per person per day. It's a more accurate representation. 25 is in general it's a diluted number for an averaging over a longer period of time. So to be more accurate, it's $25 per person per meal period. Would be a more accurate assessment. So $75 a day per person for that. So that's $300 for a family of four, say. All of that still has to fit into the same budgetary constraint. So if your rates are $20 less, it might make the difference of whether they stay. The key element of this exercise is to really clearly identify the persona of the people that you have coming in, the demographics of the people you have coming in, to really understand your cart abandonment rates when it comes to when to reveal your rates. Is it a rate issue? Is it an inventory availability issue? Did they need two rooms and they could only get one? Did they need a room with twins and there was only a king, or vice versa? All those things have a part to play, inventory types and so forth. So queuing and dialoguing with your guests to understand what were their pain points about type of room, distance of driving, and or cost to get you there, your cost variable prices because you're cheaper in the middle of the week and very expensive over the weekends and the average is still too high, or whatever it is, the incentives you offer for length of stay incentives, the fences of arrivals versus departures, all have an influencing factor on the decision process of your guests to determine if it fits into what they have the availability for finances to do. Now, we had an artificial previous 2 years where people well beyond their budgetary restrictions, as a revenge travel. They were going to spend whatever it took to get back out again. They were going to spend past their normal income budgeting guidelines of, say, 10% of their income would be towards travel. They would spend whatever, it would be 15, 20, 25%. We've seen microloan platforms become successful because people are willing to pay stupid interest to have deferring payments so they don't have to lump sum payments that would make them cash flow problems. That it's better to pay more money, exorbitant more money, like pawnbroker money, interest rates, to be able to stretch out the payments so that you don't wipe out your liquidity to pay these bills than it is to go over and just afford what you're doing. So we had artificial expectations of rate these past 2 years. How our budgeting process works internally is you have owners that are always looking for progressive growth of their investment. They're always looking at the fact that there can be more yieldability, a higher price to charge, or more inventory to sell. Okay. And it's artificial. We talked about this during the budget process last year. We talked about the budgeting process here. This dart on a board, for lack of a better way of doing it, which is not always the case. There is a math of saying for the debt carrying notes, and it's only going to get worse as interest rates necessary, which are floating rates for some companies and so forth. Interest rates have been pushed up tremendously this past 18 months. So those affordable notes that they were carrying for cash liquidity, investment purposes, and so forth, either they forfeited them back or they're stuck with very large variable interest costs. So the first place they're going to look is how can we make more money from the investment we have the loan related to? And they're going to look to squeeze like, okay, I know that our forbearance of ADR is a $175 rate is a assumable, good sellable, We get the occupancy that we want. We get the demand we want, the percentage of capture, market voice, and so forth. I need $200 a night. And what they don't realize is to gain that extra $25, the volume of demand that disappeared because of that cost them more than the few dollars that they made by raising the rates for the rooms they did sell. I don't see a lot of good managers, revenue managers, calculating lost revenue potential. I don't see them that. What they do see is they want their job preservation to remain intact. And so they highlight the positiveness of the higher rates. Well, because the rates our occupancy is down compared to last year, but we sold at the $20 higher rate. But in that conversation, they didn't share that the revenue variation actually went down. We sold fewer rooms, higher rates, but the higher rates didn't compensate for the fewer rooms sold. So we didn't hit the revenue KPI bill. And yes, it's a delicate balance to play, because the more occupancy you get, if you keep your rates lower, the more wear and tear and requirement for investment in FF&E and capital expenses continue to grow. And usually that money is a leveraged amount of money. It's a loaned money, which has interest rates associated with it. So you wear the property down by maintaining occupancy, by keeping your rates comfortable for your demographics and your guests. But by the same token, you deteriorate the quality of product from higher usage, which basically creates the need to go over and have additional capital investment to recondition the property back up. That money is never really money out of the pocket of the owner. That's a leveraged loan amount that has its own interest related to it, that they take out because owners don't spend their own money. They leverage their money to borrow other money. That's how this all business works. Somebody doesn't sit down and write a $15 million check for a hotel outright. Okay. They take the loan. They have the credit line that's available from a bank, and the bank takes the note to go over and give you the loan to pay for that. And it's based on your collateral to ensure and secure the loan, in addition to the asset that they're giving the loan for. So a lot of the hotel ownership groups or hotel owners, it's really not about them dropping $14 million of their own money in for a $14 million hotel. They're guaranteeing, along with the bank, the willingness that they're willing to accept the debit risk with the bank by securing it at a certain percentage of cash, 10, 15, 20%, 30% of the total value that they do put towards it. They borrow the rest, and the interest rates are what's killing everyone right now. So this downward pressure from above to go over and create higher rates in blindness to what the consumer has as their internal budgeting capability for their spends is counterproductive. And yet it does have pitfalls. Again, if you are sensitive to your guests and maintain your rates correctly, then you have the wear and tear on the property that requires additional loaning and funding. The other concern is, of course, is that the loans that were taken when the interest was affordable and reasonable, and you're willing to take the terms associated with the variability of leveraging it and so forth, you run the risk now that those interest rates have gone escalating way higher than they should, and there's a cash flow issue to pay off the debt, that they are actually in the upside down, and it's costing them money to maintain the loan debt to operate the business. So there you have it. A little insight as to business operations, but more importantly, the insight as to the budgeting process associated with your guests and how they calculate their budgets for travel and how it relates to your rate strategies. So there you have it. I'm getting a little background noise now, so I'm going to go and cut off. Thank you so very much for the privilege of your time. Thank you for watching us on our TV station on Roku, Google TV, Amazon TV, Apple TV, along with Samsung TVs, LG TVs. We're on all of them. Plus also our iOS and Android app, Hospitality Channel. Go look for it there. And then watching us, of course, simulcasted on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're a gamer council for media, Twitch. We've always broadcast on Twitch as well. So my name is Loren Gray. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and I look forward to talking to you next week.